Welcome back to the Purpose Over Profit podcast. This week we had Ash from Erskine Financial on. She's a broker who offers financial services, and she just has a completely different way of looking that goes against the mainstream sort of broker or financial services industry, I guess. So very down to earth, is more interested about understanding you as a person, and has a great backstory in terms of what drove her to leave her role in the corporate world with a big banking firm into business herself, and she's really thriving just now and has got lots of great stuff in the pipeline. So listen, you're going to absolutely love this podcast. She's such an enthusiastic person, great energy about her, and yeah, you're going to love it. Welcome back to the podcast. This week we've got Ashley on, or Ash, sorry, I should say. How are you, Ash?
Good, thank you. Lovely to be here. It's the first time I've done this, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a great conversation. We obviously had a call a few weeks ago, and Ash runs Erskine Financial, and it would be great, I guess, for you just to be able to give a little bit of background to who you are and a bit about your business as well.
Cool. So, I'm Ash. I am a mortgage and protection advisor, and I run a company called Erskine Financial. My surname's Erskine, so where the name came from. Was very lazy. But yeah, we started the business 3 years ago. I was on my own, just decided that it was the right time to try and do that. I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit more about that later. And we've been growing ever since. My husband Connor's also a financial advisor, so he left his job 2 years ago, and we've now grown to a team of 5. We've got another business partner, Kia, and we've got some trainee advisors and some admin as well. So yeah, our whole kind of vibe is feeling that mortgages are so much more than money, and they're not the most exciting thing in the world, but what they can give you and what you can achieve from them is exciting, and the freedom and financial stability and security that it can offer. So we're very chill, our vibe's very relaxed. The reason for that is, I think as a person, I don't want anyone to feel intimidated for getting financial advice, because it's one of those industries that's, I suppose, a bit tarnished, and it's got a bad rep for a lot of things that have happened over the years. And we would, as a brand, would like to change that and make people feel comfortable and not feel like they're going into the headmaster's office and getting a telling off for having a credit card and a personal loan. And yeah, so that's kind of a little bit about the business. I am a mum to 2 little girls, and they are 6 and just about to be 4. Lily is my chill child. She was the first one. She was the easy one. She's in primary 2. Holly is my hurricane. Call her Hurricane Holly. And she is full of whirlwind, and keeps us all on our toes at all times. And my husband's Connor, lived through in Edinburgh, and just love to have as much family time and travel the world as much as possible when possible. And that's all about me.
Yeah, love all that. It's interesting. We've all got 2 kids then, and it's interesting. You kind of get one of each, don't you? We call you've got Hurricane Holly. I've got Mental Murray. But it's funny, and it is the youngest one actually for me as well. Chris, I don't know what's your thoughts on that.
Do you know what? I don't have alliteration for any of them. I just find them both. They'll play off each other. One will be crazy and one will be chilled, and one's been crazy, the other one will be chilled. So I seem to have them
dovetail.
Dovetail really well. But there was honestly, actually, there was Ash. Even there was so much in there. That quick kind of, this is who I am. Boom, 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 boom. It was amazing. I was just laughing because I think back to my first ever mortgage appointment. And it was with a mortgage advisor, Michael, who's based up in Aberdeen now. Lovely guy, really different, really chilled out. Was telling you all the ways you can actually make it work for you. And then I had to go with a bank to get my mortgage and all this kind of stuff. And then I've been remortgaging with them slowly over time. And it's a very different experience. You feel like you're just reading off a script and it's very robotic. There's no love there. There's no passion. It's just like, this is what we need to do. Do you have critical illness? Do you do this? Do you do that? Do you do this? And you do feel like a bad guy, because I started my own business and they went, you got your own business now? Oh, wait a minute, that's a completely different conversation. And then you feel you're getting persecuted for it. So I loved all that about the different relationship as well.
Yeah, it's definitely one thing we found throughout, or I find since like leaving the corporate world and being a financial advisor in the corporate world, doing that tick box, almost like a tick box exercise. And it's more to cover like the bank's own back than actually help. It's like, oh, have you said this? Have you said this? Have you said this? And then leaving and having the freedom to speak to people and actually find out what makes them tick and be like, right, so what is your plan for the next 5 years? Like, or you're starting your own business, right? Okay, well that's amazing. Let's figure out how we can make your money work for you during that period to make it as easy as possible, because like we're all business owners, so you know that when you start it, you kind of have a little bit of like squeaky bum time when you're like, oh no, like, am I going to have enough money to cover my bills next month? And is this going to work? So yeah, it's taking the fear away. And I think money is like, I would say it's like that 5-letter word that makes us all a little bit squeamish and nobody wants to talk about it. And we're very British about it. And it's very like a big, like, nope, not talking about it. But actually, if we take the fear away from it and if people understand their own financial situation, then if you understand something, you feel empowered by it. And if you feel empowered by it, then you'll like continue on a good path. So that's kind of what our whole vibe is like, take the fear away, have the conversation, but don't make it a scary one. Like, make it something that's more educational and make people like stop and think about, right, okay, so this is going to work for me now, but what's it going to look like in 2 years or 5 years, or where am I trying to go with it and what am I trying to do? So yeah.
We got put in touch by a mutual friend. I think it was maybe a client of yours at some point, but Rachel Chan. And I've just never seen such a glowing endorsement for anyone in the financial services sector. Like, and obviously, like I work in property, as you know, so I'm used to kind of, solicitors, even brokers, banks, etc. And at no point would I ever think, like, I've maybe had good service, but it's like, I've never seen such a glowing recommendation for that. And that's why I think it was more from interest. I was like, yeah, like we have to have you on the podcast and kind of hear a bit about your story, because it's such a, as you've said, money is such a kind of taboo subject, especially like I would say in Scotland, even more so maybe the west of Scotland. I've found since moving from east to west, we just don't want to talk about it. It's like debt. It makes us all kind of like clam up. And I think that approach to it in terms of understanding the person and removing that fear as a first and foremost kind of helps you be able to deliver the best service for your customers, and kind of showing up in jeans and t-shirt and ripped jeans and trainers and whatnot can only help to kind of remove some of that fear, because it does feel quite stuffy and doesn't put people at ease when you're kind of formally dressed, I think. So I think it's just a really refreshing attitude to the industry.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, no, like for Rachel, like I think it's sometimes like going further than computer says no, and like basically going and fighting someone's corner because you believe in it. And that kind of, if we always have this, like, if there's a will, there's a way. And will not actually had a client yesterday, and they're really young, they're like early 20s, they're buying their first house together, and there's a weird situation in the background that's sitting there that's not their fault. And they'd spoken to an advisor, it was a builder, and the builder put them in touch with their advisor because obviously like they're like this. And then they'd put them to an adverse lender, and they were told you have to put down a 20% deposit and your interest rate is going to be 6%. And actually the situation isn't that they should be with an adverse lender because someone's made a mess of their credit file, and there's a lot of stuff on there that isn't actually either of them, and there's almost a bit of identity fraud happened. And they came back to me like, oh, well, they said that they can get us a mortgage. And I was like, well, yes, you can, but you're going to have to put down double the deposit that you wanted to, and you're going to be paying about £300 a month more just in interest than you would be if you actually, like, and I've been working with them to be like, right, go and speak to this person, go and speak to this person, like, give them this information, say it's not you, like, try and get it removed. But all they were interested in was getting the sale. And actually, it doesn't matter to them how they scrape together that extra 10% deposit for their house that will be built in June, and like mortgaging themselves, not even what they can afford in terms of the amount, but monthly payments going through the roof, because they don't know any different. And it was almost saying to them, like, look, I understand that you could get a mortgage, but does it mean that that's the best thing for you at this point? Like, actually, like, let's fix the situation. And yes, I know that you're in love with this house, but there's always going to be another house. So, like, fix the situation first, like, put yourself better in a better financial situation that actually you've not put yourself in the first place, but let's fix it so that when the next one comes along, like, you're going to still be able to go on your holidays and have your nice car and not feel bad about going to Zara at the weekend. Like, you've still got a life to live. Like, the house isn't the be all and end all. And I think that's just a different approach, because people still want to live. Like, life's there to be lived, rather than being stuck in the four walls of the house and being like, oh crap, now I can't do anything.
Yeah, especially knowing that interest rates are the lowest they've ever been, and like, actually your credit file's in a state that it is not through no fault of your own. It's like, you know, coming from the approach of like, how can I best service you with the knowledge that I have, as opposed to, oh, this is what I could get paid for.
A
like
commission-based
application.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a commission-based business, and we don't shy away from that. Like, you have to make a profit to be able to, for us to live a nice life and do all the things that we financially want to do. But there's a way to do it. And I always, like, I say this to my team, and I'm like, do what you love and the money will come. And if you can do that, then you'll never ever, like, wake up in the middle of the night being like, I should have done that better, or I've done the wrong thing for that person. I could have done it this way, because you've actually morally done the right thing.
And that's important as well, because we've all read before about if there's financial targets out there, it's kind of sales driven as well, and you're pushing people beyond their reach, then sometimes they might cut corners or even not look at the best way to serve somebody as well. And that will just repeat itself over time, and that will just, the brand or the company will then eventually just, the trust will just go away and it will fold. So I think that's very brave of you to tell that, not just to your team, but to a person as well, a potential client who's looking to maybe give you a bit of work and get commission, to say it's not right just now, go away and do this and come back and see me when you're ready. Because I can't imagine most financial advisors out there, or people even dealing with mortgages or anything like that, would do that. They just go, right, okay, this is the best deal for you, let's put you on that, that's it. You're paying 6% interest, that's you're tied in, and then they can't go on holiday, like you say, or do the things they love.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, I suppose, our whole thing is like, you're trying to think like a tagline for your business. And I've been going, and it's been changing over the last like 3 years that we've been doing it. And we've kind of come to this one of like, let's change the way that people buy houses, because it's an industry, and Gary, and I'm sure you find this, like, being in it as a property developer, like, they just nobody speaks to each other. Like, solicitors don't speak to mortgage advisors, and advisors don't speak to solicitors, and estate agents, and they all cross over and nobody talks to each other, and it's rubbish. It's a terrible experience if you've been in it for a while. And you
Why is that? Because I'm not close to that kind of stuff. Why is that? Is that because this is what I do, this is what you do?
Probably controversial opinion, but like, solicitors know the law, advisors know money, and then accountants know tax. So like, if you're thinking of like from a property world of like developers and kind of portfolio landlords and that kind of thing, like, none of them talk to each other, and they say, oh, you get advice from this person and you get advice from this person, but the solicitor doesn't understand the finance particularly, so they like want it done yesterday. And you're like, well, actually, for the best thing for this client is to do this, this, and this. So actually, this is the timeline on it. And then there's like, yeah, I don't know why. I think everybody just is a bit scared to talk to each other in some instances, but also like, they don't take the time to understand the other moving parts to like make it all come together. Whereas we try and work really closely with solicitors and have taken the time to understand the process, because the amount, especially if you go to a bigger firm, the amount of like you'll probably there's a certain one in Scotland, and like you could speak to someone, they couldn't actually even tell you, they could give you basic mortgage advice, but they couldn't tell you house by house. And you're like, how can you give somebody advice on the financial side of it if you don't understand the process and how the actual process works? Like the amount of first time buyers we speak to, maybe not so much in the West, but just now, like, well, actually, no, the West is booming at the moment as well. Like the offers over market, so paying over the value for a property is like a big thing in Scotland. Not so much the rest of the UK, but the amount of people that think that you can then, they're getting their mortgage against what they pay for it rather than what the value of the house is. And no one's told them. And we pick up so many clients from people who've had a previous bad experience and then having to take them back and being like, right, let's start at the beginning. And then our first thing we'll do is be like, do you feel comfortable with the process of buying a house in Scotland or England or wherever, because we do all over the UK? And then taking them through that like step-by-step process of saying like, but you'll do this and then you'll do this and then you'll do this and then it'll be this way in Scotland or this way in England, and basically taking them on the whole journey and holding their hand throughout the whole thing. Because to be honest, it's not something you do often. If you're just buying your first house and you might only do it 2 or 3 times in a lifetime, you're not going to know, or neither should you know, the process or how to do it. So that's our whole vibe is like.
You might be picking that people up at the back end as well. So it's like they've had an offer accepted, 20 grand above home report, come up, I need a mortgage. Oh, by the way, you need that 20 grand and and your deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they go, what? And you're like, right, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's it's definitely, and one of our biggest things is it's never, so our business is very split at the moment. We kind of have about 40% of it we do with investor clients, and that's like a whole other kind of area where my expertise lies. And then we have like our residential clients, and we definitely would say to anybody who is thinking about moving, buying their first house, like we say, it's your first house, your next home, your dream home, like the process to start speaking about the money side of it's never too early, because the earlier you speak to someone, the better plan you can have, and the better plan you have, the better financial position you'll put yourself in when the time comes. If you just go gung-ho and do exactly that and be like, oh yeah, I can pay that for that because a mortgage calculator online told me that I could, and then actually later go, oh, I can't do that, then in Scotland you end up in a bit of a sticky legal situation where you're like, what am I going to do? So yeah, never too early to start speaking about it, understanding your money, what comes into your bank account, what goes out of your bank account, what can you actually afford, because what you can actually borrow and what you can afford are 2 completely different things. We always say to somebody like, yeah, you could buy that 5-bedroom house, but is that what you really want? Do you want to be paying £1,200 in the mortgage, or do you want to be paying 700? Like, what would that other £500 a month mean to you? So yeah, we're very much about letting people live their best lives whilst being financially savvy, like at the same time.
And it's even maybe like, I'm thinking of people that might be sat there thinking, I can't get a mortgage, I'm not mortgageable. And I'll tell you this, I don't know whether we spoke about this before, but we've just recently moved house we just moved down to Stewarton. And we were sat at the start of the year kind of going like, I've just left my corporate role, so I've not got 2 years worth of books, let alone, or 1 year, let alone 2. We're not going to be able to move house. That was our limiting belief. That was kind of what was going on. We're going to be here for the next sort of few years. And then we actually, we got challenged by that, by someone that we work with, and went, go and explore the options. Why are you telling yourself no? So we went and spoke. I mean, it was the bank in this instance, and we just ported our mortgage straight across. There's not additional borrowing. So it was a no-brainer for the bank, because we had the ability to be able to top up and be able to purchase the house that we wanted and the location that we wanted. It was absolutely fine. But for months, we'd had this belief that, we wouldn't be able to even do that. It wouldn't even be an option for us. So I guess anyone that's sitting there going, thinking that you're not mortgageable, go and actually speak to someone maybe like yourself that can go and help give that actual information that's qualified to do so, rather than kind of just basing that on an assumption.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think sometimes I would say like part of our job is to be a bit of a storyteller. So it's all about like if you imagine you're in like a courtroom and you're kind of making your case, it's the exact same thing when we're speaking to a lender. Like, you want to present the best version of that you can to somebody, and like all the pros of what makes that work. And then if there is something that's maybe they've had like a default, or I had somebody that had like a county court judgment, and it was because their door had been broken on their factor and they hadn't paid the factor, like, and being able to present that and be like, no, this is the reasons why. Like, you never know what you don't know. And I always say, like, people that think, yeah, I can't get a mortgage, I'm self-employed, I can't get a mortgage. And like, no, you don't know what you don't know. That you can't see the wood from the trees. That you need to just speak to someone, and then it might be actually this year you could get one, but actually if you waited till next year, then you could get like double what you can get this year. But we should then can make yourself a plan, and you can have that next, right, I know what I'm doing this year and I know what I need to do next year. And actually, from the other side of things, when people do really well in their business, like I had somebody who believe it or not was a financial advisor and had spoken to a mortgage advisor, and the previous mortgage advisor had told them to just put through as much as you can in your business. And he ended up paying £12,000 more in tax than he needed to, because actually what he needed to borrow against what he needed to have on his books were two completely different numbers. And I was like, well, that's a sore one to take. 12 grand. And I was like, wow, like you deal with pension investments all day long, like, and you're just taking this guy's word. And it's crazy when you think like there's such a knowledge gap, and there's so much to get out there and so much knowledge to be shared. And I think something that we're really passionate about, sharing knowledge. And I don't know if you find this, Darren, if you've ever, or Chris, as an industry, it feels very like behind closed doors. It's almost like they go behind their like little curtain and they do a little bit of magic and come back out and be like, there's mortgage. And you're like, how did you do that? Like, where did you get that from? Whereas I was liking it to like, if you go to your doctor and the doctor tells you like you have arthritis, and they just handed you a box of pills, you would be like, okay, well, that's fine, but I have no idea like why I've got arthritis, what my arthritis means, and why I'm taking this medication. Like, getting more financial advice or money advice is the same thing. If you can tell that person why they've got arthritis, and you can tell them how they can improve their arthritis, and actually you can give them 3 different choices. Like, you can have a steroid injection, or you can take a daily tablet, or you can look at like other remedies, like, and you have a choice. People will feel like they understand the reasons why and the reasons behind it, and then they'll not just be like, take whatever's given to them, because they understand the reasoning behind why they're doing what they're doing.
And that kind of, and you kind of touched upon that, which is really interesting, because you even touched upon the whole mortgage online calculators that people go, and it's a self-diagnosis, which I find as well. It's the same with any medical issues or anything else. You go online, you'll Google it, you'll probably have a look at these calculators. You'll think, I might have a chance. You'll go into maybe one of the providers, Nationwide, or whoever does whatever else. You go through that process and it'll come back and say yes or no, and you'll just take it for granted, and then you'll walk away. Whereas what you're saying is you need to then reach out, but you need to probably reach out to the right people, because you've got to be careful. And that's why I liked as well, where I've obviously looked at your website, I looked at your Instagram and all this kind of stuff, and I love how you've done this 60-second video on first home buyers, the remortgage and all this kind of stuff, and you try and cut it in 60 seconds, but there's other videos that people can then get to, because you're trying to debunk that myth of like the kind of pain points of what people assume they can get and what they can get, because without that, there's that knowledge gap, which is exponential when you consider it, where you can then go from the Google to go to a bank and then be told yes or no, and you walk away and you think like that curtain's just been pulled down, you don't know what's going on behind the background. But you're right, if you have the tools in place to know, is it right now, is it best to wait 3 years, is it best to not have that 12 grand disappear like that poor chap as well? It must be quite a painful process to see, and to try and improve that must be quite rewarding as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because then you through that, like as a brand, like we retain our clients because they come back and back and back to us, because you build trust with that person, and then because they don't feel like you've just been given something and they've no understanding as to why, but they've actually like, right, oh, I've got that because Ash told me that, and that makes that work, and that makes that work, and that means I've protected against that, so right, okay, I get it. And then they'll come back to you time and time again, because they trust your judgment, and they know that you've got their best interests at heart. Like, you're not in it for anything other than to provide a really good, knowledgeable service.
So I want to take a step back a bit. I know we spoke about this like a couple of weeks ago, but in terms of kind of your transition into where you are now, like I think what you're creating and what you've created so far, I think is just a fantastic brand. I think it's a breath of fresh air. I like absolutely love it, and I certainly see as a property investor this tribalism between different professional services, I guess, that like to do things themselves, and it's not their, if it's, it reminds me of a corporate culture that sales don't talk to marketing, don't talk to finance, and it's like, oh no, it's not our fault, it's their fault, and you've kind of got this blame and tribal culture that goes on. So I love all of that, kind of trying to break down some of that barriers and change the way people buy houses. Love that. How did that come into fruition? I know you mentioned that you were working in corporate services. Was it always kind of financial services growing up in school? And did you know, like, yeah, numbers based, that's where I want to go? Or how did that come about?
I'm probably one of the least numbers based people like you'll ever meet. So growing up, like, I wanted to be everything. Like, I was like, I'm going to be an artist, and I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to be a teacher. I genuinely didn't have a clue, to be honest. So left school, went to uni, hated. I didn't enjoy school. School wasn't for me. Like, I was book smart, but I was one of those kids that just didn't fit in. Like, just didn't fit the mold. Did well in school, got into uni, hated uni. Like, it wasn't for me. Like, I needed to be doing. I didn't like sitting with no purpose, to be honest. Like, I was like looking around being like, why am I here? So left uni, didn't do my honours, just left. And
what were you doing at uni?
Sorry, geography and history.
Geography and history? Wow.
Yeah. So again, like, no rhyme or reason really to it other than I like them. I always loved like design and art, and that was kind of that's my go-to when I love art galleries, and that's my thing that I love. And then I was like, oh, can I do something with that? And I was like, no, that's not going to work. Like, that's not in the real world at this moment for you. Went into retail, and I'd worked in there kind of throughout uni and stuff, and then did a bit of like management, and then fumbled my way into financial services at like 21, and then worked for HSBC, and I was really lucky. Like, I really enjoyed working there. I was given fantastic training. Like, I worked in the kind of premier and private client side of things, and met an amazing group of people, and I just had a ball at 21 working in a call center. Thought it was like the absolute bee's knees. Met my husband Connor working there, and Kier, who is like basically our best friends and business partner, and just like, but then had that like need to do more. Was always like, right, let's try this, do that. And it was like, as a 21-year-old looking back now, I mean, like, you were a total pain in the ass, basically. And then the mortgage market changed, and it was becoming regulated. So there was an opportunity to go and do our financial exams and interview and become a mortgage advisor. And I didn't get it the first time I went for it. Connor did, and I was raging. Like, I was furious. And then I was like, no, do you know what? Like, and it came up again, so I went for it again. And I had to like fight to get it, because actually, like, you had to sit like numeracy tests and stuff, and I failed the numeracy test. And I like had to go, and I was like, no, like, let me do it again. And they're like, no. And I was like, no, let me do it again. So I did it again, got the job the second time, and then trained there, and was so lucky, because I think because it's that different culture. It was like a bank culture of like, you need to know the ins and outs of every single part of this to do the job. And it wasn't about doing the right thing by the people you were speaking to. It was about like checking a box and making sure, like, and at that time HSBC were like
covering the ass.
covering their asses because they were up shit creek without a paddle. So
basically the experience I've had since with banks as well, it's just pretty much just tick the box, move on, that's it.
I don't think that probably won't be that wouldn't be specific to HSBC. I'd imagine every single bank went through that exact same pain, and cost of all the claims coming in, and therefore governance became the priority.
Yeah, it did, and that kind of, so I'm really grateful because we got great training and we were really knowledgeable in what we did, and we had a great group of people, so I absolutely loved it. Found out I was having Lily. She was a complete surprise. And then kind of went on maternity leave and stuff, went back to work, kept working. And then it was actually 5 years ago. So it was the first, I think it was on the Saturday on Sunday, 5 years ago, like past Sunday, the 3rd of October, that I found out I was getting made redundant. And I found out while I was getting made redundant in Los Angeles, sitting in the waiting room. I could see it. I remember it to this day. It was one of those things like pictures that will stay in my mind forever. And I was sitting and I could see the Hollywood sign, and I was sitting in the intensive care waiting room. And my little brother had taken really ill on the 1st of October. So it was 5 years ago. It was 6 weeks before me and Connor got married. And the police turned up at my door, and they basically it'd been went from from LA to London to the foreign office to the local police, and I was informed of address, turned up at my house. I wasn't there. It was Connor, and he phoned and he was like, the police are here about Scott, and I was with my mum at the time. I went, Mum, just phone his mobile, because Scott was a wild child, and we were a bit like, oh God, what's he done? He was away with his pal for 3 weeks in LA and touring about, and I was like, oh, he's got himself in some bother. And then he phoned them, and it was a nurse in Cedars-Sinai Hospital in LA that picked it up, and they were like, oh, are you his mum? I'm just going to get a doctor for you. And it was like, oh, we need to do an operation. Do you give consent? Because he was only 21, so still classed as a minor there. And they went, and my mum was like, what if I don't? He was like, well, he'll die. So he actually had an abscess on his brain. So we just dropped everything, flew to LA. And I remember sitting, and I knew this announcement was in the ether, with work. And I remember sitting, and Connor had phoned ahead to be like, we've had this, but they need to phone you to go through before it goes to the press. And I was like, I mean, I honestly couldn't care less, but fine. And I remember sitting, and then I remember being like, if you're doing this to me while I'm in this situation, how little do you care? I was like, I don't want to be a cog in a wheel anymore. So stayed for a little bit, while stuff was getting sorted. Connor went and worked for a solicitor's as a mortgage advisor, and then left. And I had the choice. I'd had Holly, our second little one, and had been looking about, and I was like, I actually had the job offer at another estate agent as a mortgage advisor, or I was like, or I can go self-employed. And I was like, well, I've got this much left in my bank account, so I have this long to make it work. And if I don't make it work, then, well, we can't pay our bills. So that's what I did. I was like, well, I'm only going to get one chance to do this once. And I'd dabbled in having businesses, and I'd always had that want to do it. I'd tried, but I didn't have the fear factor of having to make it work. And yeah, so I started, just went out there and found clients by going on all these Facebook groups, and then one person told another person, and then within a year I was like, oh, I'm too busy, I actually can't do this by myself. And Connor left his job, and that was another big oh God, we're going to work together. We'd worked together before, but not as intensely. And then that was the October 2019, and then we went into lockdown and with two little ones, and the mortgage market shut for 6 weeks, and we were like, oh, and it was that really we keep working for it, even though the market's closed. We just keep working, we keep speaking to people, we keep building relationships, because if we don't do this, we're both going to get a job in Tesco, and there's absolutely nothing wrong if we'd made that choice as a family. But I was like, no, we've come too far to not make this work. So, and then we came out and we got our first shop a year ago. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey.
Well, I like this. So, I mean, that's all the space of like 5 years or something like that. I just want to unpack that a little.
That was
I
a
mean,
lot.
like I know, Chris. I think when you were saying like you were in Los Angeles, I hadn't spoken to Chris about that because I actually thought it'd be better hearing that on the podcast. But I was aware of that obviously from speaking to you before, and it's so interesting that I think like you can tell when you're saying that, you know, when you're speaking, you can see the emotion. You're right back there. You can see the Hollywood sign. You're right back to that moment, and it's like a penny dropping. It's like a flick being switched to say like no one's going to have this control and make me feel about myself in like this moment ever again. And it does feel like a real like turning point that has kind of driven your determination to succeed thereafter. And there's something that when you were saying just slightly like after that, when you had the decision, you could have gone and become a mortgage advisor with an estate agent, say. You wouldn't need to worry too much about marketing and getting new clients. They would be coming through that brand. But you chose to kind of look at, well, I've maybe got a few months left of savings if I don't bring anything in. And it's so interesting that fear of having to make it work, like not having any other option. It's like, no, like if I don't go out there and get clients, if I don't make the calls, if I don't go in the Facebook groups, if I don't go and chase clients, then that it's not going to work. I'm going to be a failure. This isn't going to work. So it's like your back's against the wall. You kind of just have to do it. What I'm interested in is how much of that, like that decision to go self-employed, was driven from the need to prove and stand on your own 2 feet and never be in that position of being, I guess, employed in the traditional sense again.
I think I'm a very determined person. And if someone tells me I can't do something, then I'll be like, nah, let me show you. And I think that's from being like one of 4, I'm the oldest, and it was like, and I think because I hadn't finished uni and I had jumped about and I probably had never quite achieved my potential, I was like, right, this is it. Like I'm not mucking about anymore. Like I'm making this decision and I'm going to do it, because when I'm not being made to feel like that, 2, I don't want anyone telling me what to do anymore. Like I'll make my decisions. And I was like, no, I can do this. Like I was like, I know I'm good at what I do. And I've seen it done well and I've seen it done really badly. And if we take a fresh approach to it, like let's just see what happens. And I think very quickly that brand in my head started to grow, being like this is there's a better way to do this, and there's a way to make people feel relaxed. And I think I found it by doing it. But like I just was like, nah, I'm not playing small anymore. Like you're allowed to start something and then have dreams and let it grow. And I'd always wanted to have my own business. I just never had I had the opportunity, but I just never had the fear. But I also had my 2 little girls, and Holly was only, she was 5 months old when I about decided to do it, 6 months old when I started. And I was like, I don't want to have to like juggle so that who's dropping them off today, like who's on pickup. Like I want to not have to ask to go to my kids' sports days. I don't want to have to ask to like go to parents' night, or I want to like take them to football and like take them to dancing. Like I don't want to be working until 5-6 o'clock and they miss out on those because of an after school club. Like if I can work in the evenings and make myself available for people, then like I want to be present. And I'd always had that as a kid. Like my mum was always present in terms of like she always took us to activities, and she worked in the school, so she got like term time, and I was like, I wanted that for my kids growing up. But I'd also wanted them to see like, and it's a very male dominated industry, and I was like, I want them to see that you can, as a female, like go and do it and do it really well and not be afraid to like challenge. Because it was evident even last week we have to do like compliance events and stuff, And I was at one, and there was like, it was 41
They sound
attendees.
awful, by the way.
Do
They-
you know what?
Just even like they need a rebrand, like compliance event, like
Yeah.
that in
I have to
itself.
say that word gives me a shudder from my corporate days when I had to go and do compliance training. I'm the worst guy.
I mean, it makes me, yeah, it's terrible. But I walked into the room, and it was 41 attendees, and there were 6 women, and I was like,
Shocking.
and I was the youngest person in the room, like easily.
And the thing is, by you walking in, you're instantly judged by these people as well. They'll be like, "Who's this young girl?" And it makes me sick.
100%. But it was also like, well, do you know what? This is a good thing, because there's a gap, like there's like a 15, 20 years age gap, but actually, like, it shows it can be changed. Like, we are innovators in what we're doing, so let's just embrace it. Like, haters gonna hate, so we'll just go with it.
And if nothing's changed about this world over the last like 10 years, the more information that people have got, Facebook, Instagram, you can talk about the benefits or detractions from it, but YouTube's huge. Any bit of information you want, go and just Google, right? And you'll get that information. The consumer's got so much information now. There's too much information, you could arguably say. Yeah. So actually someone coming with a fresh like approach of, I want to understand more than just the numbers. All right. I had to do the numeracy test 3-4 times before I was able to become a mortgage advisor. But the most important thing, it sounds like you bring in your role, is about listening and understanding how you can best serve people based on their specific circumstances, not because of what's maybe filled out in a form. And I think that's just so important.
I just want to build on that, because actually, first of all, thank you for sharing that very personal experience and story with us. That was tremendous, because I'd never heard that. And I'm a bit of a tearjerker as well, so I watched Disney movies and I cried straight away. So I was very quiet in case I started crying there. But what I was going to say was, it's amazing as well as how these experiences build and shape us, not just as individuals, but as businesses as well. Like you were saying about your brands, all about humility, integrity, and all this kind of stuff, that you've been treated in a way from an organisation that when you're in such a really vulnerable situation, that then they're going to phone you and tell you something that's going to even shatter you even further, which is terrible. But it's amazing you've taken that and turned it into such a positive. And the other aspect is as well, I love to hear, and Darren spoke about this before, about people having side hustles. Everyone that has businesses seem to have itchy feet at some point in their life, where they've got little different businesses going on. It sounds like you've got that entrepreneur mindset as well. We've had businesses, you've trialed it, and then you've not had that fear factor like Darren says, and you just ran with it. So is this one business you've got just now, Erskine? Is there more in the pipeline, or have you got more ideas? It sounds you're a very ideas person.
Oh, I know. I think I drive Connor insane, to be honest. So we have Erskine Financial, and well, hopefully when this comes out, we have got another business that is launching. Well, hopefully be launched and done and out there when this podcast comes out, and it's actually called the Organised Home Group. So there's only so much we can do with the financial side of things, but I think we were saying, like, there's all of this stuff out there that's usually there's almost too much information for a consumer to like funnel and understand and take all of the things that they need to think about for buying a house, because it's not just the finance, it's not just the legal side, it's like, am I buying it in the right place? Am I like, what do I need to think about? What's the school catchment's going to be? Like, there's so much that somebody needs to think about when they're buying a house, because it's a life-changing thing. And that can be then once you're moved in and being like, oh, this is so overwhelming. Like, I'm buying my house for the first time. What do I even need to put in it? Like, there's this massive gap of overwhelm. So the Organised Home Group is going to be a load of different things, some of which I've been told not to mention yet. But one of the things that will be up is we actually have a podcast, and we are so it'll be the Organised Home Group podcast, or the Organised Home podcast, and it'll be kind of like a discussion. So there's 4 of us, and it's financial advisors, interior designers, like home Instagram lovers, and we've basically breaking down all of this kind of myths and worries, and talking about the financial side of it, but also the kind of process side of it, and
you're kind of disrupting a sector as well, aren't you, by bringing this all together, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how I'll go down in the industry, but I'm hoping people love it, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so the organised home group, and that'll branch out into lots of different things as the years go on. We've got a grand 5-year plan to kind of shape up a little bit and see where it goes. And I'm also working with Rachel as well. And we're kind of trying to bring together, and it's not just for women, but bringing together people in business, because again, like, it's when you're working by yourself, especially at the start, it can feel quite overwhelming and quite lonely, and you don't have that connection to the group of people that you maybe had before when you're working in an office. So we're going to have like a once a month East and West get together with anybody who has wants to get a little bit of inspiration, bring their ideas to the table, get a bit re-energized, get some positive energy, and we're going to be called the Vibe Tribe. So that's a kind of thank you. So just kind of empowering you to be your best self, and maybe upskilling certain things in your business, maybe connect with people of other businesses where you feel like you're maybe and something I've learned, I think when you start your business, you're I need to be able to do all of this by myself. And actually, that's just pig-headed, because as you grow, you learn, I have learned, and it's been a total learning curve for me. It's no, I need to go and speak to the experts in their field, because I'm an expert in my field. So I need to get the other experts in their fields to help me and my business grow and go in the direction that they want it to. So kind of helping, inviting as many people together as we can to share their stories and network and have a cocktail or two at the same time.
And the thing is,
I love you just threw in a cocktail, have a cocktail or two at the side. I wonder how big a part that might actually end up being. Anyway,
I was going to say,
sidled it in there.
I love how you're saying you're going to disrupt that kind of industry as well, and how they're going to react. Because the thing about disrupting industries is it's crucial, because then you create a new swim lane for yourself. Everyone then jumps on the bandwagon and goes, "This is what we need to do," and they play catch up. So if you're changing that sector for the good, that can only be positive.
Yeah, I hope so. So I'll let you know when it's live and so have a little listen, see what you think. Yeah, I'll learn from the pros. But I know I loved it. I've been listening, after Rachel kind of connected this, I started listening to you guys, and it's I love the podcast. It's fantastic. It's so inspirational, and there's so many different people that you've spoken to. But it's really it's funny, everybody's different and everybody has their own uniqueness, but there's things that people have the same drivers, and it's really interesting when you listen to across all of these different businesses.
Yeah, I mean, and you've touched on, I appreciate you saying that, and I think some of those things that you're talking about, you can, you have heard, through this, or people have heard through this, hopefully, there is a bit of a myth around starting your business and having a business plan, having it all figured out and stuff like that. You don't need any of that. You didn't have that. You just had a bit of chip on the shoulder that you were maybe, do you know what? I need to finish this. I didn't finish uni. I'm going to get this right, and I'm going to do this, and no one's ever going to put me in this position again. And that's the stuff that the emotional drivers are the things that are the things that get us off our ass and go out and do difficult things. Because none of this, no one's came and handed you clients on a plate. No one's came and built your business for you. You've had to go out and take that and go and build that yourself, and build it in the way that best suits you. It's not just working, every hour under the sun. You've got a young family, you've got a husband, you want to go and travel and spend time with them. So you've given yourself the autonomy. You've had to do the difficult things, but you've had the autonomy to do it in the way that best suits you. So part of the podcast is just about trying to get that message across to people and kind of demystifying a bit of that. And I've absolutely no doubt they'll be picking that up from talking to you over the last hour.
Oh, thank you. I feel
Well, that's it. It's touching upon the whole life aspect, and I've noticed as well that you do stuff which is fantastic. So I've seen here you've done the Women's Aid, you've gifted 500 IKEA vouchers, £500 IKEA vouchers. You sponsor Dalkeith Thistle Community FC.
Oh yeah, that's my little girls' football team.
And I love that because my daughter loves football, but she's got that kind of misconception that it's not for her because it's all men and boys and all this kind of stuff. So we're slowly getting that. So I showed her that picture and she was really positive. So hopefully that kind of stuff, and that shows about demystifying and breaking stuff down as well, which is great.
Yeah, and I think about them playing. Like Lily's, she's tight. Like, she's really tiny, and she's like a 5.
So is Lionel Messi potentially the best player at the best player that's ever played the game? So yeah.
But I just think like I grew up playing sport, and it was a big part of my life, and I loved learning as a team from it. Like, and it gave you that kind of, you learn so much from it as a young, like a teenager and a young child, and it's funny because Connor never had that, and he is very much like, I want the girls to have that because you had it, and it's giving you drive. And actually, like, it's for them playing football, like this is like the most exciting time to be in football as a little girl, because it's only going to get bigger. Like even in 2 years, that wee team has went from having 12 players to 25 across like the 2 age groups, and they love it. Like she gets like her boots on and she gets muddy and she's like running about, and they're still learning to, you know, not all crowd round the ball, but like they absolutely adore it, and it's really, really refreshing being able to like try and give something back, and being able to do that, which is something I think like if you're employed, you don't get those opportunities. You don't get to give back and help your like the local community around you.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. Like the more we can do to break down those sort of barriers, the better. You know, we've moved to Stuart, and I had to actually Google it, but it's like the sports centre here is named after Rose Riley, who apparently went, like, she's a Scottish football player, Hall of Fame, went over to Italy and top scorer there for however many years. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Like, I never knew that about before I moved to Stuart, but I'm like, my daughter's going to know that and have that kind of, she's going to walk past that on the way to school and know that's the type of role model that she can have in that sort of sport. And yeah, coming back to like the Vibe Tribe, you know, having that sort of sense of community and supporting women kind of come into that space for inspiration. It feels very similar to the type of message, I guess, that we're trying to bring on the podcast as well. It's like solo entrepreneurs and going into business can be really, really isolating. Whether it's, you know, it's not gender specific, it is isolating. But I think there is something there about finding togetherness and community and a sense of belonging, where it's not about competing with, you know, XYZ. It's about kind of coming and trying to lift each other up, trying to learn from each other, and know who's doing things maybe slightly better than you are, so you can learn, maybe employ them, or just take some good advice and bring that back into your own business. And I just love the fact that you've got these other projects. It doesn't sound like that's necessarily making money. It's just about something that you're really passionate about, and you think, you know what, there's something here to be able to help people. And that type of stuff you couldn't do if you were in a 9 to 5. There'd either be a conflict of interest there, so you'd contractually you couldn't do it, or it's just you wouldn't physically have the time, which is probably more likely. So no, it's great that you've got these other projects on the go as well that just sound like they're fulfilling you on a different level, and a bit more about giving back to the community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm excited to see where they both go. And if my 5-year plan, which comes to fruition, just keep pushing in that direction.
I'm excited to hear the podcast as well. That looks good. Sounds like a good concept
you.
as well. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, listen, it's been fantastic chatting to you for the last hour. If anyone's looking to reach out to you, what's your handles? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
If they're looking to speak to us about their finances, or they're looking to move house or do anything to do with that, whether you are looking to buy residentially, so somewhere that you're going to live, or if you are an investor and you're looking for someone to have a fresh set of eyes over your portfolio, or see if there's a smarter way to do things.
As I am doing with you right now. I've sent you my portfolio over. I know I've got a couple of refinances this year, so yeah.
And we've got yeah, so at Erskine Financial on Instagram is probably the best way to reach us, or Facebook. We need to get our social media is getting better. I need to do more videos. That's on my to-do list. I've got like a list of things that I need to do videos on. And then with the organised home group, same, we're the organised home group on Instagram when that comes out. So just to message us if you have any queries or you want to find out a little bit more. And yeah, I think their biggest thing is like, if anyone's listening to this being like, oh, could my money work smarter for me? Like, is there a way that I have a mortgage, I don't even know what it is or where it's at or how long's left or what the balance is. Like, get in touch, because you would be amazed at what you can do. And as you say, interest rates are so low at the moment. We just broke somebody out of a 5-year rate and saved them £18,000 over the next 5 years. Like, it's insane what is available. So don't be scared to reach out, and don't be afraid of judgment, or if you're in a situation and you're like, oh, like you found yourself and you have a bit of debt and you want to speak to somebody about it, like, we're here to help. We're here to advise, no judgment, and we've seen it all. So, and if you're in a situation where you're like, I can't get a mortgage, reach out, because you never know what you don't know.
That's the best sign off from anyone by far. That was fantastic. No, it was fantastic to meet you, Ashley. And yeah, I'll be checking out your Instagram more. I love the chat about the bios, about being how you're the taxi driver for the girls and your husband the guitar player and traveling. I love all that. It brings a more personal approach to that side of the business, which is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It's been so lovely to meet you both.
Yeah, likewise. And just in case you've got a date for it, the podcast, have you got a date for when that's released?
So the aim is the first 4 episodes should be up by the end of October. So then this is coming out this November-ish time. So yeah. But the social media stuff, there'll be a big kind of loads of content on social media up by then for sure.
Perfect. Well, we'll get the links and whatnot and tag it to this as well. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Ash. And yeah, I'm sure we'll be speaking soon.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll speak to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pop Pod this week. If you'd like to leave a review or share the podcast with others, then that'd be awesome. You'll find us on Instagram at the Pop Pod, and on Facebook we have a community group called Purpose to Progress that anyone can join. And we'll be back every Monday with a new episode, but until then, stay on purpose and we'll see you next week.